If communication is an issue in your relationship, then this segment is for you. By the end of it, you'll know how to perfectly train your man to do everything your heart desires.
Oh, no, that's not what it's about. Psychologist Dr. Elizabeth Kelly has interviewed many men and has found that when she asked the question, what are 3 strengths men bring to relationships, men were stumped, silent. Sure, they feel they should provide, but then what? And really, does anyone care how they think? Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning,
Elizabeth.
David, and good morning, Kim. Thank you. It's great to be here again.
What is the role that men is supposed to play these days?
Oh, the expectations have definitely changed about the roles men are supposed to play. If you'd have asked me that a few decades ago, it would have been very clearly about the provider.
That's right. And it was clear-cut, wasn't it?
It was clear-cut. Men were appreciated for that, and it was kind of expected. And in the modality that men work in, it was easy to provide. And he provided and protected and gave that stability.
Provider and disciplinarian.
Disciplinarian, yeah, that was a created role.
Wait till your father gets home.
Yeah, but that cast him in a very negative light. That wasn't a created role. Unfortunately, that was some of the tensions coming out in the family intending with that. So back then it was much clearer. With generational changes, the feminist movement, women now stepping into the provider role a lot more, it's left a bit of an identity gap for men, and psychologically and identity-wise, it left men at a bit of a loss, and we're really underestimating the impact that that might be having on them. So today, David, the roles for men, we need to really bring forward a lot more the other roles that they had anyway, but were never expected to show. They weren't asked for nor appreciated in giving. We've just got to be careful in those roles that we can break down those, that the expectation of how quick it's supposed to come out and that it's supposed to look like how women do it, rather than how men do it.
Gosh, you make a good point.
Skills.
That is such an excellent point because men and women will parent.
Yes.
Let's talk about parenting first.
Yes.
They parent so differently, don't they?
But
and
what
so
are you
they
saying?
should. Why should they do it the same? Sorry, David.
Sorry, I just want to backtrack there. You're saying that the expectation of man is to parent in a particular way.
Well, if we have a look at the modern day roles, to answer your question from before, you've got the provider, which is still a key component of the man's roles. Then we go into
and man wants to be a provider.
And man wants to be, and he does it great. And he does it great, as long as he's not criticised too much for how or if it's not good enough and so on. Won't go there, though. Then there's the family man, which I then break down into the sexual man and the intimate man. Then we've got the fatherhood role. And I keep that separate because not every family man is necessarily a father. But let's not undermine them either. And then a really important one is the mentor and the role model.
Right.
Massively important for masculine influence for young boys and men. So back to that question of the fatherhood role, the man and how he expresses things, it's allowing men to be men and express their mode of nurturance, their mode of providing, because providing is one of the main modalities for men's nurturance. That's one of the ways they express it.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be the way females present it, otherwise they'd have been born a female.
So women are just constantly just yappering in the background, aren't they? Just
They can yakka in the background a little bit too much, actually. There's this whole thing, what you commented on earlier, excuse me, with the interviews I did in my book of asking men. We covered a gamut of all of these roles that I've just mentioned. I asked them the question, what strengths do men bring to relationships now? Now, we're talking about 6 men, 43 to 67 years of age, achieved a lot in their life, professionally and personally, very verbose in those interviews, and yet I get to that question, silence, confusion, they're stumped. And I started to get concerned after about the 3rd or 4th interview, going, what is going on here? Because what would happen with the men is they would instantly self-deprecate, or they would put themselves down, they'd come up with what they don't do, or what they don't do good enough, or what women do better. And I'm going, well, back up, boys, that's not what I asked. What strengths do you bring now? And Craig, one of...
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, look, okay. Craig, one of them actually mentions, wow, I'm really struggling with this. I'm finding it quite confronting. And when then Paul, the 67-year-old, actually says, I'm going through my mind trying to answer your question, and first he tells me, ask me another way. I go, what do you mean, ask you another way? But anyway, then he goes, I'm trying to think of an answer to your question, and I'm wondering, who needs a man? And that really concerned me. I was then quite preoccupied at that point that I thought, I hope I haven't left the other men thinking that. So I made a point of bringing it up in our group meeting later, but to have a 67-year-old man, which, by the way, he represents a lot of men that unfortunately are going down that track, to have a 67-year-old man say, who needs a man, and forgetting the valuable role that men do play.
I actually feel really sad now that you've said that.
Yeah, it is sad.
Why are they stumped by this question? Because I would imagine it's easy for them to think, well, here's how I define my life. I'm perhaps particularly, I have success in my job, I'm bringing in some money, I'm allowing the family to be the family.
Yes.
But it's that interesting point, what you bring to the relationship.
Yes, it's
And
moving...
I wouldn't know how to answer that myself also,
Well,
probably.
because initially that role was more so about the provider, work covered a lot of men's identity. Men's health is wrapped up in men's identity, but the main identity was the provider in the past. With generational shifts and the changes in gender roles, you might remember last time I mentioned about the gender role re-identity.
Yeah.
The personal side of man, the intimate side of man, the family man is coming out a little bit more, and that goes back to the point I mentioned before about the expectations of how quickly men pick up on that, because we didn't expect them to do it in the past, and they certainly weren't demanded on doing it, but also figuring out how men express it, how men do it in their strengths and skills.
So this does come down to communication in that sense, because women can communicate better about what they see as their strengths and weaknesses, whereas, I mean, how many times do you sit around with a group of blokes and go, oh, yeah, you know, my communication skills aren't that great? They don't, do they?
They don't talk about that stuff so much. I mean, they talk about more blokey stuff. Women do have more verbal skills where they'll talk about things and a lot of feeling, emotional stuff. Blokes will talk about bloke stuff, and this is an element in terms of the mentoring masculine influence, which is absolutely vital for young boys and young men. They do it the men's way. A beautiful story with a fellow Rotarian of mine last week. Coordinating a men's mental health forum down on the Mornington Peninsula, and we had a committee meeting last week, and I brought up the topic for the panel of speakers. I really want to make sure mentoring is in there, because I'd like fathers and sons to come. And he shared a beautiful story that brought up an important element of masculine mentoring, where he had a young guy in his 20s go back to him. This is the Rotarian friend of mine, is in his 50s, 60s. A young bloke now in his 20s, letting him know, you know, when I was a kid and I sat in the back seat of the car with you and your mate, the way you guys just spoke to each other, as a kid, he didn't integrate in that discussion. He goes, but I just listened to you guys. I listened, I learned. It helped me to just compare and contrast, and from that, it helped me evaluate who I was as a man. Exactly.
Oh, my goodness.
And I just went, I'm so glad you shared that with me. It just encapsulates the importance of how men are huge role models, even when you don't know that you are, the positive influence that you can have, and how men mentor, and by osmosis, the masculine influence passing down from older men to younger men. And we've really got to value that process. It's a side-by-side process. It's a process of osmosis more often than not, less verbal skills compared to women. And that's not to say it's any less valuable. It is valuable and important for men.
Process of observation, and typically done in silence by men. Can I just get back to the family man? Because I would imagine a lot of men these days are wanting to be more of a family man. They want to connect more with their families, with their partners, with their children. But they're still playing this role of the guy that goes to work, the guy that is the provider. And he comes home and he has the weekend, and he's struggling to work out exactly where he fits into that family routine when the family routine has been so busy and whole during the week. If you know
What's kind of happened
David,
without
are you
him.
talking about yourself?
No, I think I'm talking about a lot of men.
Absolutely, they do experience it. I think one thing we really underestimate with men is that in general, they're likely to be the full-time provider, and research has shown that the main obstacle men feel in terms of their ability to be a good father or a father in the fatherhood role is the full-time work. Because let's think about it practically for a second. Time and energy management-wise, he's not there. He is going to provide the family with that financial stability. So when he comes home, he's actually got a lot less time to engage and connect with the kids, let alone build a relationship with them. And it's really vital that during that time, the female partners don't then criticise or say, don't do it that way, or that's not right, or be careful. All safety issues.
Go and be the family man. Go on, off you go.
Bang,
go.
Do it straight away. But it's allowing them that time to connect unhindered, not only for the father to be able to establish that time in the reduced time frame with the energy he's got left after the day's work, not discounting the female's energy usage, of course, but she's had more time to get used to the fears, the uncertainties that go with parenting, whereas he's having to do it in a much shorter time frame. And for the kids, let them get to know their father in an unhindered manner for the man he is at that point in time, the way he can be.
And David, that's such a good point too. You know, the man comes home and he's got an hour and a half before bedtime, or sometimes less, and it's like, go do the family.
Be family man.
What do I do? And the kids kind of go, oh, Dad, what are you doing here? And the father goes, I don't really know.
So an hour and a half, connect, put them to bed, and then come to bed and be sexual intimate man.
Well, yeah, there's that component there. I mean, that's typically not an issue for men on the sexual side of things, although that might be a stereotype, though.
But what man expects out of sexuality and intimacy, heaven forbid he even thinks about intimacy. I mean, well, I think intimacy exists within his psyche somewhere, but he doesn't know how to show that. Well, and sexually, I mean, do the two genders, where do they meet?
2 points I'd like to make on that one. Firstly, with the fatherhood stuff, one of the other interviewees, David, made a really good point about he works in a corporate environment, so decent 12 to 14-hour type days. And when I asked him how that impacted on his fatherhood role, the comment was, well, I'm not very good at it because I don't get to practice it a lot. And he just articulated it so beautifully that I just think that's valuable for men and women to read, for one. In terms of the sexual and intimate side, again, one of the things Craig commented on was men aren't taught how to be intimate, or young boys aren't taught how to be intimate. And let's get real, sexuality is a huge definer for men, and we've got to be careful not to turn that into a negative. Obviously using it honestly and not misusing it or abusing it at all, but that is a huge definer for men, and ensuring we don't put it against them. I mean, their testosterone is about, I think, 800 times more than what it is for women. So, it's quite a tunnel vision time, and sexual experience is huge for adolescents and young men during that time. But the role modelling and mentoring then is also important from older men that have got life experience in developing intimacy over time. And by osmosis, then young boys learning that, if not having engagement to learn it.
And watching the way the dad relates to the mother.
Absolutely. And the hugs, the cuddles, just the holding hands, or
just
even
the loveliness.
The chat, the simplicity of being able to engage non-sexually and seeing that that healthy side of the relationship as well. And young boys knowing that there's someone, if not their father, another man in their community that used to be there much more easily than they are these days, unfortunately, that they could feel comfortable to ask questions and get some answers.
But it's not just sons, because, my whole view on how I should be treated by a man and my husband, I got from watching my dad just be beautiful to my mum.
Beautiful point, Kim. We've got the importance of masculine influence, not only for young boys, for everything we've just mentioned, is important, but for young girls in actually, dad is kind of the first man they get to learn what the basis of a relationship with a man is, in its normality, in its healthy mode, and self-esteem and security for a young girl is importantly sort of transmitted from the father relationship. Even though they've got the nurturing from mum, there is still that security and self-esteem of girls wanting to know they've got that ability to be protected. Dad provides that, and with the changes we've had in family structure, generational changes, the fatherhood role has unfortunately become less prevalent in their physical environment. Then tensions between couples with divorces going on and access to kids becoming an issue. But also the extended family opportunities and community member opportunities that used to be there so naturally now unfortunately are a little harder for kids to access. And I often see a lot of single mums as well that have got young sons desperate to have positive masculine mentors for their sons. So they know it's important for them to have that masculine influence. So they're really important things to bring out of men being able to help young boys become men, and all the glory that goes with that, the strengths and the skills that masculine traits have that we all need to benefit from.
Look, there's so much to talk about.
I love talking to you.
It's great talking to you.
So enlightening.
It's a huge topic.
Love to speak to you again.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time.